Okay, we had just finished doing a times a 10 times in a row, where a started out as 1 over 2 and ended up as 1 over blah. So what is a? We can find out many things about a. For instance, we can say a class and then print it. Remember, hotkey P will do it. Oops. Let's try this instead. A class. That was an error message. I misspelled the message. So a is of type fraction. Let's inspect a. We can inspect a several different ways. We can use the menu, inspect. We can type a, inspect, and then do it. Or we can simply do a command I. Now what does that give us? That gives us what is called an inspector window. An inspector window is a window that shows the contents of an object. In Squeak, everything is an object. We'll explain more about objects later. In the meantime, let's look at what this object is. It's 1 over this rather huge value. It's of type fraction. The numerator is 1. The denominator is blah. So, let's do something interesting from within the inspector window. Let's type numerator colon equals 2 and do it. And now you notice it said that the numerator is 2. The denominator is what it always has been. But in a sense, it's half of what it was. So if we were to print it out, we would get an entirely different answer than before. We would get, in fact, transcript show a carriage return. Transcript show a carriage return. We could have actually evaluated that. And you see, we now have 2 over. And we could actually do it again. Transcript equals 4. Do it. And if we were to show it again, we would get 4 over. So, we now understand that we can look at the contents of any object using our inspector window, and we can even change them from within the inspector window. Let's go back to looping. First, let's delete all of this so we'll have a nice, clean space to work with. Recall we had a loop that was evoked by saying 10 times repeat. In fact, 10 receives the message times repeat. And the parameter of the message is this block of code, which is evaluated 10 times. And that block of code prints out a after it's been multiplied, or then it multiplies it by a, etc. So let's look at a different way of doing an array. Let's go 1, 2, 10. Do. And now we're sending the message to do to 1 with the parameter 10. It's not going to make sense for a long time what that means. We'll use a simpler example for message sending in a bit. But in the meantime, let's go transcript show I. Where'd I come from? Well, I is actually a variable that is being passed in. See, every time it goes through from 1 to 10, it's passing a variable. We're going to call it I into this block of code. And then the block of code itself says transcript show I. So let's do this block of code, and we counted to 10. First time through, I was 1, second time through 2, third time through 3, etc. Now, let's create a new object. Let's call it an array. We'll say my array. This is a variable we're creating. My array colon equals array new. And when we do it, we've created a new array. We can inspect it. Command I for inspect. And you see it is a new array that is empty. Well, you can't do much with an empty array. So instead, let's give it a size. So instead of saying array class, sending it the message new, we're sending it the message new colon, and then passing it the value 5. So what happens now? We're creating a new array, and we inspect that array, and now it has 5 slots. Slot 1, which is nothing. Slot 2, 3, 4, and 5 are nothing. Well, what if we were to say my array at 1 and print it? Instances of my array. See, we got an error because my array was never defined. So we're just going to close that error out and correct our typo. My array at 1, print it. It's nil. But what if we said my array at 1 put 2? Well, in fact, my array now contains a 2. If we inspect this variable again, close this one out, we're going to find that there's a new variable named array of type array, and it has a 1. Now, suppose we said my array at 1 put 3 and did it. Well, we see from the inspector that my array now contains a 3. Okay, what does this mean? Well, recall we're going to do a loop 1 to 10. And instead of saying transcript show, this time we're going to create a new array with 10 slots. Close that out. And we're going to say, we're going to copy this in and say my array at I put I. What does that do? Well, we created an array, my array, inspect it, and it has 10 empty slots. Each slot is nil. Now we're going to perform this action 1 to 10, where we're changing I from 1 to 10, and we're putting at I, we're putting I. So the first time through it puts a 1, second time through it puts a 2. So let's do it. And sure enough, we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We put those numbers into the respective slots. Now, arrays in Smalltalk are unique in most languages. Instead of a number, we could say my array at 1 put some text. And now when we do it, the first slot contains some text. See, arrays in Smalltalk contain objects. Some text is an object. Each of those numbers is an object. We can actually inspect from in our array inspector, we can inspect the first slot. So we would say inspect. Notice I right-clicked and got a different set of menus specific to this window. They're called context-sensitive menus. So we inspect the first slot, and we get a byte string named some text. So let's do something new. Let's just say sum and do it. And as you can see, it changed the contents of array to sum, but it didn't change some text, a byte text. It didn't go through and cascade through. It turns out that text doesn't change. However, if we had said something like my array 1 equals array new 10, do it. And now we say my array at 1, or my array at 1, put my array. Make sure we've done it. Put my array. Do it. And now the first array contains what we had before, except into the one slot we put a new array. So we can nest through. We can actually say my array at 1. That will actually return us what is inside the first array, which is the second array, the one that's at slot 1. My array at slot 1 at 2 put 2. And in fact, when we do it, we now see we've changed what is inside slot 1. We can keep on doing that if we wanted, but you get the idea. It's very powerful. It means you can manipulate arrays within arrays, you can manipulate objects within arrays, within objects, and so on. Everything is an object. Everything can point to everything else. And arrays can have things added and subtracted. You can do anything you want with them. You can loop through them with different kinds of loops. We could have done something strange with a nested loop and so on. But you get the idea.